Yeah? You can hear me?
Hey, yeah. See, and proof
Okay.
that Myth is in fact a woman.
Ha 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 ha. Very funny.
I'm saying for Father Sam who isn't here.
Yes. Right.
May he rest his soul.
That's too bad.
Get out.
It would have been fun for him to observe one debate, although man, he would have made it super not fun.
No, he would have made it really aggravating, as his wont.
Well, I think he was lame because he bogarted every conversation.
Yeah.
1 second. Okay, I'm back.
Okay. Well, you can totally go first to explain your stance and everything. I will happily take a second to at least get my head on straight. Because I was having...
Before we start, I want to thank you both for coming, and hope I have your permission to record you, to put you on YouTube.
Yes.
It's a basic discussion. There are no rules, except maybe I'll jump in, or maybe Heroic Ninja will jump in to like maybe correct y'all.
Sure.
All right, talk to y'all now.
Well, the topic is net neutrality, and I am arguing against the government regulations, and the reason for that is I'll give a few reasons. I think, and this was the approach that I had until I really started digging on it, that net neutrality seems like a problem with one solution, and I think as I kind of did my own discovery, that turned up to be the case because government had so entrenched itself in this that it very much seemed like that government was the only solution. But the more digging I did, the more I found that this is really a problem caused by government, and it can be solved by the expulsion of government. I typically am opposed to regulation. I think there have been times and places where you can make a case and go, yeah, okay, obviously, we want some regulation in that area. But even when you talk about something like healthcare, I think modern day, most of the regulation that exists doesn't need to exist because you have things like Yelp and because you have laws in place. I think that's easy to attack and say, well, people are going to die if you take away all of the healthcare regulations. I don't actually think that'd be true, because I think doctors who kill people will either be thrown in jail or get poorly reviewed, as they already are. I know this isn't directly, I'm not speaking directly to net neutrality, but I just want to paint the point because I think it's easier to understand in the abstract like this. The healthcare industry already is being steered by the free market in terms of consumer feedback, and that steers where people go and get medical care. And I think that if we had a deregulation or continued with deregulation in the area of ISPs, we'd see a similar thing. There's a couple of specific points that I think would be good to go over. I included a graph that doesn't have like hard numbers attached to it, except for some generalities and some statistical data. And basically the point of this graph is to, the takeaway from it is, look at the things on that list, look at the things that are the most heavily regulated by the government, and look at the things that are the least heavily regulated by the government. And you see a dramatic price difference. And I think it's not only a price difference, but you also see a difference in quality. I think TVs is obviously one of the easiest ones to look at. TVs today versus, for the purposes of this graph, 1996, TVs are substantially higher quality than they were in 96, and they're also a lot cheaper than they were in 1996, versus things like healthcare or college tuition. College tuition being a very notable one, because that's a whole different debate. But these are areas where you see massive amounts of government involvement, and as a result, you see price hikes, and you see, I think you could argue, degradation in quality. But there's a few points that I wanted to speak to specifically about the Title II regulation. Under Title II, the internet is subject to a bevy of regulations at the whim of the FCC. IFC or ISPs have to submit proposals for any quote unquote new technology or business model to the FCC, which would effectively stifle any innovation. That means that they're getting approval for rolling out faster services or fiber, things like that. And while you may not immediately go, well, why would the government stop that? That is the question of every business owner in the history of the United States, is why is the government getting in the way of me doing business? So I think it's foolish not to acknowledge that government would at the very least slow this down substantially, which is something else that I will be bringing up a little bit later on in here. The FCC would also have the power to, quote unquote, partially regulate the capital investment of existing companies and determine which companies, if any, can enter the ISP market. The internet being under Title II's jurisdiction puts nearly 1 trillion of GDP and 2.5 million jobs under a new regulatory regime, according to the American Action Forum. And what the FCC constitutes as abuse can be changed at any moment. This is just another needless bureaucracy taking control of private industry, and they get to levy a whole bunch of rules and also taxes that are not subject to really anyone except for whoever is in the White House at that time. There's a quote from an author at National Review that I wanted to read, and I think this is really the solution that we should be looking at. Quote, municipal governments should look for ways to encourage rather than discourage broadband investment. Local governments and their public utilities are notorious for charging broadband companies exorbitant prices for access to publicly owned quote-unquote rights of way, without which they cannot erect the infrastructure necessary for internet service. These municipal monopolies are among the chief reasons why many places have little or no competition among ISPs. But it doesn't have to be this way. Kansas City, Austin, and Provo all hammered out favorable agreements with Google Fiber, the internet's giant ultra-high-speed broadband project, and several other cities have followed suit. Kansas City officials partially credit the arrangement for the city's ascendancy as a tech hub. Meanwhile, other ISPs have increased their offerings to compete. Verizon, AT&T both recently announced plans to offer higher speed internet hookups for customers in select areas. If you want better and faster and freer internet, the solution isn't more government regulation, it's less. Open up the doors to true competition and you'll see in-home internet market, what we've already seen in the cell phone market. You see better prices, better quality service. I think it was not that long ago that T-Mobile was barely anything in the cell phone space, and they have been just chewing apart Verizon's pretty substantial lead because they've been offering a service that has been growing in quality at a much cheaper price, and there are aspects of T-Mobile service that have continually been better than what Verizon offers. So I think we just need to do exactly what we've done in the cell phone space in the ISP space and work on ways to increase competition, not ways to solidify these ISPs as the only games in town.
Is it me? Is it my turn?
It's all you.
Okay. Well, I will preface this by disclaiming the fact that I am in a mixed bag of opinions on net neutrality. I am in agreement with the fact that it shouldn't be under Title II. There's a lot of stuff there that applies very specifically to enormous businesses that do not apply to small ones, especially ones just entering the market. So it's difficult for me to say this was the good idea. To me, this felt like the lazy idea. It didn't feel like a good idea. However, my main concern really, really, really revolves around information. There's a thing about this let's just say that it's commonly, maybe not so commonly used argument, but it's the end-to-end principle. And this is the fact that all content must be treated the same and must move at the same speed in order for basically the internet to remain the internet as we know it today. I would argue both against and for that, in the sense that I would argue against the fact that things have obviously changed. Things are not necessarily as always available, sometimes for the betterment of us as a human race. Sometimes it's, but I still hold the fact that we really do need to uphold that. Net neutrality would take that and make that absolutely secure. However, it would also damn a whole bunch of other things that I think are good for, like ISPs, as well as just in general anyone coming into the space to try to compete and innovation. The other thing about this, sorry, I'm interrupting myself, but the other thing about this that I always hear is that net neutrality would uphold competition and innovation, which is odd because of what was just said. I would say that you can see there would be competition innovation for about 5 minutes, and then it would stall out. So the idea, I think, here is that we need to remember that, yes, we definitely want innovation. We definitely want people to try and enter the space, pull a T-Mobile to a Verizon. But the only problem here is that sometimes that means sacrificing, freedom of information in some cases. This is directly, you don't want people to basically tell you have to pay more to access something that has already been readily available. And at the same speeds, sure, but even accessing it would come into question later. That is a legitimate concern, and I feel like that is the main and actually the only argument for net neutrality of information on the internet as we know it today. Because obviously there is much to be, there's an advantage to be gained by ISPs to kind of hold themselves as gatekeepers to information and quality of internet. And I understand that that's kind of how it is now, but government has also been enabling things, ISPs like Comcast, like the really big stuff, Time Warner, I believe, and Comcast, the East Coast and the West Coast, the mobs that have now outlined marked out places in the U.S. to stake their claim. They have agreements to not fight each other, which I think is exactly the opposite of what should be happening. They should absolutely be fighting each other, but they have decided that they are the big dogs and they will win this. They have, whether it is intention or not, government support on that front, which I think is only going to be made worse by net neutrality. So as you can see, my position is a little more complicated. But I would absolutely welcome discussion on how to try to retain the protection for freedom of information and the quality of internet, though I understand that competition would probably increase quality. But it's one of those things where there have been instances where Comcast has absolutely said, no, you can't see this. And even in smaller ISPs, where they've actually either slowed, not just not can't see, but slow down. So they'll prevent access to speed sites. They'll prevent access to a couple of other stuff. It's directly competitive. Now, mind you, they haven't ever expanded, as far as I'm aware, to information that has, like, government information or, actual private access to stuff, things that we put on the internet for other people's consumption. They don't give a shit about other people's information as of yet. But at the moment, it is mostly just to try to protect themselves from scrutiny as far as competition is concerned. And that's true, that's also true for smaller ISPs. Smaller ISPs have actually pulled this as well, which is funny, but it's super true. When it's two tiny internet service providers in a small town in the middle of nowhere, they will absolutely pull the same shit that Comcast does, and no one will hear about it. But it's absolutely being done, which I think is great. I'm hilariously. Yeah, sure.
I'm curious if the concern that you have extends beyond, because we see them kind of doing stuff that kind of helps promote their business over their competition.
Oh,
is
super
your
much,
beef,
yeah.
Right. Is your beef with that specifically, or just that you don't want them to expand beyond that?
Both. I would rather. I understand that it's going to happen. People have pulled marketing shit and different kinds of ploys to prevent people from seeing their competition's better services or something.
Sure. Burger King doesn't advertise McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point is that on the internet it's a little more difficult, if only because we should be able to just see what we need to see. And if we're searching for it, that's the thing. People don't have to dig that hard to find this information. But when we bother to try, it should be there. Because it's basically a giant, I consider the internet a giant library of sorts and forum. And as such as I understand, net neutrality, okay, so it's, again, as I was saying earlier, I'm mixed on this because I don't think it's the best idea. But I understand the position. However, the idea that perhaps government will then be in control of that information is also not exactly my high point either. I don't like that.
Right.
I prefer to keep it as it is, which is why I'm not torn by it being reverted. I want to see what happens. However, I think that companies that try to pull that kind of like slow down, that, you know, throttling speeds, that kind of horse shit, not necessarily on even peer-to-peer, because that's a whole different bag of worms, can of worms, whichever. But to stuff that's basically just site speed tests, or you know, anything like that. Information that should be readily available to us should be readily available to us. I know they will be charging more for things like Netflix, because of the amount of bandwidth that Netflix uses all the time, or other people use Netflix for. They will be charging more for that. And I love how Netflix complains about this. And I'm like, guys, you know, I mean, I don't know what to tell. What are you going to do? I mean, you can't just.
That was one of my major. I was just going to say that was one of my major beefs when kind of doing a lot of the research on this, was that like a lot of the companies that I saw coming out in favor of the Title II regulation very much stood to gain from that. Like there's no one in this world that is more passionate in their hatred for Comcast than me. I want them to go. I want them to go out of business so bad, because I just think they're crappy at customer service. They provide a crappy product that barely meets their own standards. They rely on a bunch of garbage. Like, they're bad. I don't like them, but I also don't think that I get to use the government to bully companies that I don't like. So like, when I'm seeing Google and Facebook and Amazon, all these companies coming out in favor of it, I'm like, well, yeah, of course you guys like it. You get a free payday. And
Yeah.
the one of the things I was challenged on when I was kind of initially looking into this stuff was about the fact that, like, they were charging Netflix and stuff like that. I can't remember what the term is for it.
I don't.
Just going off.
I don't
but
know
anyway,
what that is.
I don't know. It's super loud though.
That's weird.
Good God, someone picked up your phone.
It
But
might have been me. Shit, might have been. Okay. Well, never mind. Excuse me on that. Sorry about that.
People were gonna charge Netflix or whatever. They were gonna charge Netflix for the extra bandwidth they used. And one of the arguments that I heard for people that were arguing for Title II stuff, they were complaining, saying, well, people would get different rates, you know, based on their usage. And I was like, well, actually, if you think about it, an argument that I heard that was pretty good is that we're already subsidizing other internet users. In fact, most...
Sorry. I actually got cut off. My phone just incredibly spazzed. I'm so sorry about that.
No sweat.
Yeah, you repeat like the little bit of what you just said. Sorry.
I was just saying that like Netflix and companies like that should theoretically have to pay more, because they are using most, like, the most bandwidth, basically. And I could even see individual users having to pay more. Here's the thing. I hate it. I want to pay a flat fee and have unlimited data, especially because once the backbone of I had a little bit of work history in network services. Once the backbone is built, you are printing money through these services.
Yeah.
So like Comcast charging me $80 a month for lines that they've had in place now for 20 years. Like, they are making their money. They are not suffering from a lack of profit, but they also get to charge whatever they want. My thing is this: my grandma is subsidizing my internet usage. because she uses the internet twice a month to look at an email, and that's like it. But she pays the same amount that I pay, and I'm flirting with, you know, a terabyte plus a month because of data caps by Comcast. But I don't know. Like,
no, I hear you, and to be fair, I'm in agreement with the fact that basically this is, and this is why I'm fine. I want the competition because I want people to come in and try to challenge Comcast, but that means very strictly less government involvement and less help. I don't want this treated like a utility, and not because I don't think of it like a utility. I almost do, and I think most people do at this point. But that's kind of a mistake for now. The reason I say that is only because it is pipelines of information. This is stuff that it's not like turning on a light bulb. It's not water. These are basic things that we all kind of need in our homes. We need the internet as much, but not for the same reasons, and it's not the same stuff that's being given to us by the government. And also, if you've ever seen or looked into innovation in utilities like, you know, water or electricity, you'll see that stuff's only changed kind of somewhat. I mean, they're updating things. It's not like they're not. But it's, hang on one second.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. The amount of government influence stifles innovation in the market. And I really, in this area in particular, I think it's unwise to mess around with it. I thought the way it was framed before when I was a fan of net neutrality was that this is the way that you protect the free and open internet. And after doing a fairly basic amount of research, I discovered that no, this is actually the gateway to how you destroy the internet. This is how you get government in and they start regulating it, and that's the beginning of the end.
Yeah. And it's...
Got a little feedback there earlier.
Oh, hang on. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I guess. You can hear me? Okay, good.
So...
Okay, sorry about that.
So what would be the way to accomplish? I think honestly the best way to accomplish, because I think that the people who oppose net neutrality and the people who favor it actually have the same goals in mind.
Yeah,
I just think that
I think so too.
one side has been demonized because one side really, 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 really likes the government. So I think one side is going to make the other side look like the evil, racist, bigot,
that's
sexist,
just
homophobic.
normal. That's typical politics, and that's going to get in the way of actual conversations. Which, to be fair, I mean, I would focus very strongly if you're going to focus on this kind of like net neutrality. If you're going to actually focus on real net neutrality, which is basically making sure that ISPs do not control the flow of information across the internet, excepting, of course, in the legal activity. Then that's what we should just focus on. That's the thing. The people that fight on either side of this argument fight because they each have something very large to gain. Now,
I just think that the way to accomplish that is better handled through the free market.
And I agree. I agree with that for the most part.
I just can't think of very many examples where this, like problems like this one, not exactly analogous, but problems like this aren't solved through high competition, because competition is always best for the consumer, and that's what we're talking about here.
I just want to, and that's the thing. I just want to make sure. I really want to make sure that basically in this fight to get better, really, genuinely, it is to get better. I just want to make sure that people don't forget that's actually, I got to be honest with you. Most people on the internet, when they argue for net neutrality, they're arguing for freedom of information. They're not arguing, they don't give a shit about the rest of it. They think government will control that, but the problem is that's government controlling that. And government hasn't controlled that before. And I don't want them to now. Because I don't, I look at, they have bad track records as far as, kind of keeping that in check. So,
my sole argument is to keep government's dirty fingers off of it.
But I want to make sure that people arguing against it don't forget that's the main core issue. And for most of the people who they'll probably talk to, and you ask anyone on the street, they're going to talk about raising prices, which I heard a lot about. And yes, of course, they're going to try to raise prices for some things and lower prices for others. They're going to try to do that no matter what. But I think that'll even out. I really do think that'll even out after a while. And again, we already are seeing people like trying to rebel against the system. And the truth is that they're doing exactly what they're supposed to.
They're also doing exactly what you're expecting them to. They're flirting with it. The problem is that there's no one there to contest them. My apartment complex is serviced by two companies, Comcast and then Earl's Funky Internet or something that like gives you, I mean, literally it's like 5 down, 2.5 up. It's nothing. So I really only have one choice if I want internet that's capable of doing anything. And
Yeah.
I actually contacted CenturyLink because they are based in this area. And so I said, hey, I desperately want any option that is not Comcast. Like, what do we have to do to get you here? And I was speaking with them, and they did research, and they said, well, your apartment complex appears to have an exclusive agreement with Comcast. So I said, okay, fine. So I went down to my front office, and I said, hey, what do I have to do to get you guys to open it up so other ISPs can get in here? Because I hate working with Comcast, and I want a different deal. And they said, we don't have an exclusive deal with Comcast. So I'm getting lied to by someone, or they're misunderstanding. But what I suspect is more likely is that Comcast and CenturyLink have an unofficial, you stay out of my neck of the woods, I'll stay out of yours kind of a deal that Comcast does with Time Warner.
Let's just say Comcast and Time Warner does that with everybody. The only people I
Which
know
they've
that
openly
really
admitted.
Yeah, and that's a problem. That's actually something we should address because that isn't right.
That's my beef. Is like we have examples of them or engaging in anti-competitive behavior, which is specifically covered by antitrust. Like this is an area where the government actually has the ability to step in and say, no, you guys don't get to do this. You guys are specifically avoiding each other. This is an area where government could get involved, and I would support it because it's what the government is supposed to do if something happens like this. We have an oligopoly that they have created, and then they are not willing to fix it. Instead, their solution is to say, oh no, how about we just take control of all of it? That's insidious.
It's not, again, it's the lazier option. I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but I'm definitely going to say it's not at all the best idea. I don't think it's the right one. I'm going just basically pragmatically off of what I know. And I can't
basically go in whole hog for it when I know it's the laziest option.
Right. Also the least effective one. I mean, you can look at situations like LASIK eye surgery, because that's an area within healthcare which is heavily regulated. But because that's an elective surgery, you have the cost of oh, good God, we're getting the feedback again. You have the cost of you have the cost of surgery going down significantly over time, and the quality again improving drastically. So I mean, I don't know, like it's hard for me to take the Occupy Wall Street people seriously when I can point to so many instances of the free market creating better outcomes for consumers, and I can point to very few examples. I won't say none, because I think there are some, but very few examples where the government has said, I'll take care of it, and it hasn't messed things up even worse. I think the government was designed basically to collect taxes and kill people. And anytime it strays further away from those things, it produces worse and worse outcomes.
Yeah. The cause is not ignoble, but it is not best. It's just lazy. It's just lazy.
So,
I mean, you can be really specific about. My thing is very specific. It's like if you're really concerned about competition, then invoke antitrust. Don't just sit on it.
Yeah.
And if you really give a shit, that's the question. Do they really give a shit? Or is it just a matter of they're playing ball because they feel like they're using words flippantly? They're not really giving a shit about what they're saying. which is probably true because everyone in there, and I say in there as in Congress, in government, has a benefit to playing nice with people who have a lot of money in the private sector. This is not necessarily, again, I'm not indicting against this, a whole nother conversation regarding money in politics, but the fact is that that's the truth for now. So either side, whenever I hear people argue, well, why isn't, for or against, they have shit to earn from that. There's capital from that. And I want them to stop talking about that. And I would like them to start talking about the fact that it's not, right now what we currently have is not necessarily a monopoly, but absolutely kind of, again, it's a mob situation. There's two competing mob families, and they both have...
It's an oligopoly, isn't it?
Yeah, it's close enough to an oligopoly as we can get that doesn't have anything to do with government, except they totally do.
Right.
And in this case, I am happy to say, that's the thing, you can't... No one in Congress is going to say, well, we should probably invoke antitrust laws to get, competition back. If Republicans worth their salt really want to do that. What?
I mean, they broke up AT&T how many times? They broke up AT&T like 3 times already, haven't they?
It's a cyclical thing. It's like every time they think it's not going to happen again. And I'm like, the laws are there for a reason. We put them there because we know it's going to happen again. This is a natural concurrence of companies. Just anything that makes it big and then has enough stakehold in the nation to crawl up to top spot has the propensity to just absorb smaller entities into itself until it becomes a giant monster. And it does need to be cracked open every once in a while to let that stuff resettle and then refloat back out the top. And it's going to happen again and again and again. And
I think the problem...
we can't shy away from antitrust like we are currently. Right now, we're doing that, and we're not giving it even a single thought. I haven't heard that argument from literally anybody. From either side, by the way.
I've heard it from people, but not the people that I would want arguing for it.
My point, which means they know that it's not a good idea for them.
Well, yes. I think the problem we have in Congress is I think there are a handful, like I would point to basically the Freedom Caucus probably. Like there's a handful of people on the right who have a principled stance on why they oppose the Title II regulation stuff. And then I think you have a whole bunch of Republicans who oppose it just because the left is for it. And I think on the left, you have it because I'm very conservative, so this is going to come as a shock to no one, but I think the left is typically and predictably boring and lazy when it comes to solving problems because they always just say government can fix it. That is 100% every time a Democrat comes across a solution, their solution or a problem, their solution is to invoke government. So I think that's why Title II seems obvious.
Yeah, it's mostly because, of course. And again, I condemn it because it's lazy thinking. And it's also, again, it's genuinely not fair. It's not. I basically coming from the side of small ISPs and small businesses because I have big beef with anyone who is against them and or ignores them entirely because people tend to forget about them a lot. But from their end, or just small businesses in general. But in this particular case, these guys have to deal with a lot of other crazy shit that was specifically regulated against Comcast, not them.
Right.
So that's why I think it's a lazy stamp to slap on there because it totally ignores a whole group of people that they say are the backbone of our country. And that's obviously not necessarily the case.
Did you see what the Ajit, I can't remember, I can never pronounce his name, but the
Ajit? Is it Ajit?
Yeah, Ajit. I think so, Ajit. Did you see what he said specifically about small businesses?
No, I did not actually, specifically.
Hold on. Somewhere I have this quote because it's so good. And when I heard it, I'm like, man, and people were mocking him. I'm like, you morons just don't understand. Like, he's right. He's talking about the actual solution here. Okay, I think I've got it here.
To be fair, that video that he did was a little bit like, okay, calm your tits, buddy. That's not, you don't get to connect with the kids these days by doing that. But it's more of a marketing issue, not a principle issue. Just saying on that one.
Okay.
If I mock him for that, it's for that only.
Okay, listen to this. Let's see here. Between the onerous taxes and regulations, the FCC could make it more difficult for smaller ISPs to thrive in the market while increasing the cost for consumers. The commissioner, Ajit Pai, explained how smaller ISPs are struggling. He said, quote, among our nation's 12 largest internet service providers, domestic broadband capital expenditures decreased by 5.6% or $3.6 billion between 2014 and 2016. I've seen it and heard it, he said. Title II regulations have stood in the way of investment. Just last week, for instance, we heard from 19 municipal broadband providers. These small government-owned ISPs told us that even though we lack a profit motive, Title II has affected the way we do business. The small ISPs reported that Title II was preventing them from rolling out new services and deepening their networks. These are the kinds of companies that we want to provide a competitive alternative in the marketplace, Mr. Pai says. It seems to me they're the canaries in the coal mine. If the smaller companies are telling us that regulatory overhang is too much, that hangs like a black cloud over our business, as 22 separate ISPs told us 3 weeks ago, then it seems to me there's a problem here that needs to be solved. Like, I mean, you can say that he's making that up and challenge the validity of that, but I mean, he's directly talking about how these regulations hurt small ISPs, which are the supposed competition that everyone seems to want. I'm not even convinced that they want that, though. I think they just want Comcast, but they want Comcast to deliver service that is government mandated in quality, and I just don't like that conceptually, even though I don't like Comcast.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to fight, because I think most of us in the world understand that we do not like Comcast, just because we've been burned at least once or twice by them before. But the other problem is that it's a rock and a hard place. It's not a great choice, but
it's not a great choice. But you also
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say you can't get justice by piling on injustice. Like the crappy thing is that this may be the solution may not be one that immediately strikes an arrow into the heart of Comcast, but it still might be the right thing to do.
Also, I will mention this. I know the comment about the fast lane internet kind of thing. Now, again, this is, for me, I don't care about speed. I do care about speed, but not in the way that these guys seem to care about speed, like paying more for speed. Because most companies already benefit, and like Facebook, high bandwidth things, Google, Facebook, Netflix already benefit from what are essentially internet fast lanes, and this has been the case for years. And it's been, let's just say that they've been trying, like Comcast has been trying to charge more, but that's the thing, that's kind of where this whole thing came from, was that obviously, the businesses on the other end don't want to pay the other business. So it's a B2B situation. We're just happy to be caught in between it. That's what I'm starting to realize, is that we're just kind of caught in a tug of war between two different groups of people that own businesses that are large and affect all of us. And that's part of the issue, is that I can't look at this. I can't look at this argument and go, well, I can totally agree with one side, because both sides are full of shit on certain things. They really are. They're both wrong. And how net neutrality just happens to be the one that happens to be more wrong, but only just, if only because, again, they happily, that's the thing, they happily talk about fast lanes, right? They'll complain about pricing, but they won't talk about information. I've never heard anyone complain about that, as far as outside of like the people who are actually like in the tech world who will talk about it. They'll be like, but what about information? And that's the only argument that's made sense. And if that is the case, then my recommendation would be to literally talk about just that. It's not an FCC thing. This is a law thing. This is just law. Like, we've exited all that are, I think we've exited the department and gone into just Congress. Because it's a matter of, I understand that you can't, charging more isn't the issue. It's affecting the speed of sites that you don't own to either to basically create kind of a falsehood. You basically omission. You lie by omission. You basically say that this doesn't exist, or it's it's too slow to get to because it's their problem, even though you're the one throttling the speed. That kind of thing. And again, I understand that there's actually more of a risk if government is in total control of that, because then they can totally hide shit. They can pull a China. You don't want them pulling China.
They get to choose at that point what gets
so
throttled or not.
But it's still a concern because someone is still choosing for me. That's the issue I have.
Right.
I don't want anyone choosing for me, and anything that will prevent that from happening is I'm almost always on board for. But everything else
you're saying to me, everything you're saying to me sounds like you don't want someone else choosing for you.
Shocking.
I agree.
Isn't it?
That's why we want choice.
Yeah.
Which is why the solution is free market.
Yeah, for the time being. I mean, that's the thing. The conversation about freedom of information is separate from net neutrality. Even if it's not wholly separate, it is a separate conversation. It has to be a separate discussion and a separate law thing. If you're going to do it, you got to do it separate from this mess, because it's only going to.
I don't know if I agree with that, because I think the problems that you're describing, I mean, the more that I've researched this, the more that I realize that even though you and I both work in the tech industry, so we have maybe a bit more of a understanding than a layperson on the details of this. The solution isn't a technological one. The solution is an economic one. Because capitalism doesn't care about the kind of information that is being transmitted. It cares about green. So yes, I know you're talking about fast lanes, slow lanes, but if there was actual competition in the marketplace and Comcast started to pull that garbage, then they would start to see a decline in their service. That's just the thing, is they could get away with it today. They could get away with it in a world in which there's Title II regulations, because there's no one for me to go to leave them. But if there's actual competition, if we open up those municipal, the right of ways, basically, for smaller ISPs to be able to use those pipes that have already been laid, then there can actually be competition. And when a ISP acts in a bad fashion, like Comcast does, it gives people the option of being able to leave them and go somewhere else. And so I think that is the solution to the problem you are talking about, is to get competition in the marketplace, because people won't put up with it. Even.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just have this cautionary paranoia thing going on where I worry about it. And I think I'm pretty sure you're more right on this one. I just don't want people to forget that that's still a possibility, and to be very what's the word, vigilant in protection of their own information. But I am deeply skeptical about vigilance in my country. So that is a thing that I understand. That's a point. That's a very much my opinion, my worldview kind of getting in the way there. But it is definitely one of those things where I look at the country and go, I am deeply concerned about the ability to just let things slide. But man, oh man, is there more of a chance of that happening if net neutrality comes into play. So I will definitely give you that one. Like it's not even questionable. Like people take all kinds of shit for granted that government gives them these days. I think that's one. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, I don't want to go harvest my own shit. Okay, some of this stuff is like, I'd rather have it just. I would like water and electricity. Thank you. That's fine. let's keep that going. And among other programs that probably help, but there's a lot of stuff in there that people just kind of let it. They just don't even think about how it gets to their house, how they receive these things. They don't think about it. So yeah, I think you're right in the sense that if government control happens, like we will accept lower quality in the long run because we think we're safer, which is dangerous. always. So, yeah, I would say that it's let's just say net neutrality version 1 and version 2, in this case, because there were proposals for it, right? Both are not the best options. I can understand the spirit of it. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. It's yeah. Yeah, most of us didn't. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I would say that it happened and no one noticed. That was a thing also. I don't think anyone even noticed when it actually happened. It only became an issue when they were talking about getting rid of it. Because I know they mentioned it. I mean, it wasn't like a big thing that, I mean, it happened, but it wasn't like a big thing that happened. People recognized it. They went, "What's net neutrality?" and then stopped asking questions. Yeah. Let's just say that it's barely just getting off the ground. That's the issue, is that people are very short-sighted. They don't see the fact that only these new ISPs that just basically just walked in the door, because really most of them are not old. CenturyLink is that's a different issue. But I mean, as a business model, this business model is new. No, but they're all relatively new. Comcast gained a lot of ground. Same with Time Warner Cable. Both of them gained a lot of ground in a very short amount of time because the internet blew the fuck up, as it should be. The thing is, we're not like done innovating here yet, and also, I mean, we haven't seen it for a very short time. It was, yes, I do recall these days. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and let's just say again that again, I understand where this is. I understand the concerns. I understand a lot of the stuff that's happening on the pro net neutrality stuff. But again, like many things, I don't think it'll help the situation. I think it'll only hurt it by you're right on the solidifying these ISPs is like the trophy ISPs. They're the ones that made it, and no one else can come in. It sets the bar very, very high for anyone. The barrier of entry for this business is already ridiculously high because we made the mistake of selling actual physical land, well, quote unquote land, but yeah, essentially land. As the government sold land to Comcast thinking it wouldn't be a big deal. Dumbest move I've ever seen. Why not rent it? Why not lease it? Like, do some. This was a short-sightedness on the government's part. Now they're trying to rapidly make up for it, and they can't because it's too late. So that's another issue, but it plays into this because I think it matters that makes they helped make the barrier high. They helped make Comcast and Time Warner anti-competitive. Now they're going to try to make it more, less. I mean, what are they trying? They're trying to correct a mistake they know they made. I'm pretty sure about that, but they cannot. It's out of their hands now. So I'm not sure about that. Would be again. It's like focus on the information, focus on lowering the barriers for competition, whether through antitrust law or otherwise, and you're going to have a better time with this. But if you're going to insist on slapping stuff on it, just hoping that government control will solve everything, government control doesn't always solve everything. And I know that, and you have your own barrel of laughter about that. But I mean, that's the truth: is that it's not perfect. It's run by people. Humans are fallible, and they will make mistakes. And especially in the limited finances, because you don't like taxes. No one likes taxes. People don't mind paying taxes because it knows it gets them something. But what if it doesn't get them anything? I mean, that's well, that's the thing, is that it's not an investment. It's something else. I don't know what to call it. It's just not. Let's put it this way. That's a whole nother conversation. But in this particular case, I would say that I'm the only reason I would ever be for it is to protect the flow of information. But it is equally dangerous putting that in the hands of government as it is leaving it alone for ISPs to play with. I would say that it's less so on the latter end, if only because if we're vigilant, again, that's a big if, we will be able to protect ourselves. But we have to actually want to protect ourselves. If we don't do that, we deserve the right to lose that power, that freedom. It's a concern. It's a concern of mine. I'm not, I don't want to be like mean. I'm legitimately concerned. Everyone's so busy with their own shit and they don't bother to read deep into things anymore. Or at least maybe they don't have the time. I don't know. Well, let's put it this way. It is difficult to envision anyone like taking the concerns seriously because they've grown up with, I don't know what they've grown up with, but I don't know. I've grown up with government trying to do good things, but failing. That's where I've come into that. It's not a matter of, in this case, this is a very good example of like them trying to correct a mistake that they made ages ago. I understand the concept. I'm just not as sympathetic maybe as some other people. Nor do I think that giving them more of something they've already made a bungle of will endeavor to fix that situation. Sometimes letting it fall down and building it back up is better. And it's not going to be popular because no one likes their favorite toys going away. Well, you know what I mean. But that's my point, though, is that it's like, no, no. But like, that's the thing, letting stuff fall apart in order to refix it. But again, trying to focus on the conversation on this one. But I think I've said everything I really want to say on it because my concerns are real. I feel like they're valid, and I feel like the people who argue for it are valid. But I think they're just short-sighted. Most of the people arguing have lived. We've lived with Comcast as a central part of our Comcast. Look at me, I'm doing it right now. Internet. We've lived with internet as a main part incorporated into ourselves for all of our life. So we're terrified at the idea of it changing. And the thing is, it's not going to change very much. It is going to change, but maybe for the better. Yeah, and that's again, yeah. I mean, it's not like I don't. I'm only concerned about the constant vigilance of the American people and the lack of thereof that I have seen of it so far. Or I thought it was social studies. Ah, yeah. No. We gotta narrow it down. Yeah. 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 No, it's good. I understand that. And again, I'm the concern about control of data, the rights and freedoms of digital data. But this is all stuff that can get fixed if we're patient enough. It took a long time for us to get to cell phones. I just want to make that point out because it does sometimes take a while for it to happen. Trying to control the speed of innovation is not a good idea, nor does it work. So the idea that maybe hold your horses and give it a chance and be vigilant. Don't slack off. Be aware. Yeah. Well, a little earlier, but yeah, I mean, smidgen. I hate being that person that says just be patient, but maybe be a little patient. But that doesn't mean you get to kind of sit there and twiddle your thumbs and watch it happen. That's not what we're trying to say. I mean, I want to see people pay attention to this. I want them to call out Comcast, and I want them to call out Congress for, failing kind of infinitely on this whole situation. They should have known better than that, but they were short-sighted. And now we're being even more short-sighted. And I don't think that's the solution. Seeing the concerns, but disagreeing with the proposed solution. I think that's the case for me.
Come to that determination.
Sorry, say that again? You cut off.
We've determined that America will go with my solution, I think.
Well, at this point, it's the one that's going to have to be taken because I think everything went through. I don't remember if it actually went through today because they were actually saying
If
it
what went
would.
through.
Today's the day.
That what
but the official
internet dies? I thought that was like a week or two ago.
No. That was the official vote, but the actual putting it through was supposed to be today. I think.
Yeah, whatever.
Nah, I'm trying to remember when it happens, but I'm just
whatever. Oregon already voted to do their own net neutrality thing, so they're already trying to screw up the rest of the country.
Washington's trying to do the same. There's a couple of other states, obviously, trying to do
Leave
the
it to the
same.
crazy coasts.
Sure, we'll take the hit. Question mark. Yeah. So that's pretty much where I'm at, though.
All right. Well, I think we're good.
Unless anyone has any
was awesome.
questions.
Since no one really